Hey everyone, number 23 on my list of 100 greatest songs of all time is Tomorrow Never Knows by the Beatles. Nothing could have prepared me for the last song on Revolver, which is my favourite album now and probably since the first time I listened to it. But I had I had probably heard, well, I had definitely heard Yellow Submarine, but probably heard Eleanor Rigby at that point and maybe something else off it, like maybe Taxman or something. But I had a copy of it on vinyl from my mother's friend, and she gave me four Beatles albums. And that was the one. There was all Beatles for Sale was in there, and I think Hard Day's Night, and possibly Rubber Soul. And there was vinyls that I had, so I was listening to them on vinyl. I must have been about 14 or 15, and the first time I heard it, Tomorrow Never Knows, I thought that's mental, and I thought it must be the most complicated song that they've ever written. So then, figuring out or trying to understand it later on in life, I realized this is what it is. That's it. C, B sharp. Sorry, B flat. C, B flat. That's it, and it was purposefully done so by John Lennon. He tried it with the word on Rubber Soul, and then he did it with Tomorrow Never Knows. Try and write it in a song with one note, and he uses a modal drone kind of effect on Tomorrow Never Knows, which is really interesting because um, it's Indian inspired. It says there's a modal backing of tambura, a sitar drone, and there's obviously a bass guitar as well. But when you listen to take one, it was before it was called Tomorrow Never Knows. It was called Mark One, and all he was doing, there was just this noise in the background. I don't know if it was on a guitar or if it was on an organ or something, but it's like that's all it does for it, like. And it stays in that, and there's a little bit of Ringo playing, um, and the build up from that to what it became is incredible. If you gave it to somebody and said, "Listen to the listen to take one of it, and then listen to the finished product," it's like a different band and a different song and everything, and it's inspired a lot of people. There's a drum loop. It's obviously Ringo playing the drums in it, which are very cool. Paul McCartney does these cool little bass lines. He had a lot of. It was mostly Lennon wrote the song, but McCartney added a lot to it in regards to tape loops, which he was kind of playing with at the time. They kind of both were, but McCartney was more into it and more active with it. Like John Lennon was considered quite a lazy person, so McCartney would go home and or into his where he was living at the time and just mess around with tape loops. And he brought it in, and when Lennon brought it to George Martin, the producer, he said he wanted the background to sound like something like 1,000 Dalai Lamas chanting on the top of a mountain. Because he did that before he did it. He wanted one song to sound like an orange. He also said he wanted, being for the benefit of Mr. Kite, he wanted to be able to hear the sawdust, so it sounded like the circus with the sawdust on the floor. So he did give some very difficult notes to George Martin to figure out. The song, there's reverse guitar parts in it, which I think sound really, really cool. I can't remember which song they were taken from. They did play around with verse stuff on Rain. I have this idea in my head. No, I think Dr. Robert is taken for the. In I'm Only Sleeping, there's a reverse guitar solo. I think that's taken from Dr. Robert. So I'm not sure if they recorded songs or sounds particularly for Tomorrow Never Knows. But you hear that in the background. You hear a seagull-like sound that goes on and repeats itself. These kind of string sounds comes in sometimes, which could be more to do with what the guitar effect is sounding like once it comes back on top of it. The lyrics were inspired by I'll read out the full title, but a Timothy Leary piece. So The Psychedelic Experience, a manual based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead by Timothy Leary, Richard Albert, and Ralph Metzner. Now, John Lennon was a big fan of it. The Timothy Leary thing. Now, because he was the LSD king or whatever, and Lennon was taking a lot of acid at the time. He did take. There is a line in it that says, "Whenever in doubt, turn off your mind, relax, float downstream." And the opening line of Tomorrow Never Knows is, "Turn off your mind, relax, and float downstream. This is not dying." It is quite dark, but then, others would probably turn on and say it's quite bright. The idea of letting go and things like that. It's like, when I think about it, like how deep it was, or how deep it is as a lyric. And when I was younger, like, Lennon was like this amazing, and he still is an amazing songwriter and all that, but you kind of see through some of the stuff, and you kind of think he was kind of shit talking a little bit. But like, I prefer the songs when he's like In My Life, for instance, the lyrics and stuff. And I do think the lyrics in this are really cool. I'm not going to read them out, but I do think they are good. But he has lifted them quite a bit. The real mastery is in what they do musically with it. It's an astounding piece of work for 1966. If they ever needed to really know that they had to stop touring at this point, this was the song to do it, because there was no chance that they could recreate it on stage. Not in 1966. You could now, obviously, but they couldn't just stand there and go, "Float downstream." That was in the wrong key. I did it in G there. "Turn off your mind, relax, and float downstream." Like a Bob Dylan thing, where they're just standing with acoustic guitar and maybe a harmonica or something. But I remember reading an article but an interview with the guys from the Chemical Brothers, and they said, like, in the 90s, they were just taking so much inspiration from this song in particular. And if you listen to the one with Noel Gallagher, he does two. They do two in Noel Gallagher. It's not Setting Sun, it's the other one. They said that that's basically a rip off of it, and it does have this very similar drum beat to it. But you couldn't help but be impressed as a musician or a performer or an artist in general to listen to this song and kind of go, how did that happen in 1966? How did the Beatles manage to create all this like soundscape and this whole like cut and paste idea of what you can do with a song? It wasn't just verse, chorus, bridge, chorus twice and finish. There was a lot of stuff going on, and it was what was going on in the background that was more important than what was actually going on in the foreground. In the 60s, it was all about presentation, and I suppose the singer-songwriters was starting to happen with Dylan and everybody else who kind of followed in behind him, and with the bands, they kind of started to kind of sound and look a bit similar. And look, the Beatles led that, but people were following it. So the Beatles kind of decided to kind of rip up the script and said, like, well, we're going to do something completely different and kind of astound everybody with it. Revolver, I would recommend to everybody, but Tomorrow Never Knows, if you've never sat down and listened to the whole song, I would suggest you put on a pair of headphones and go and just soak in all those little sounds in the background. There's not like a song that has things that you can still discover on your 100th or 200th listen when you're sitting there, and like Lennon, the treatment of Lennon's vocal, the kind of scratchy idea, for some reason that just sounds like the perfect effect to put in his voice for what he's saying in the song. It's almost like he's hanging above you, or hanging above himself, even, in that kind of arsey way that I just said a minute ago about the lyrics. But as if you're a person looking down on yourself. And I guarantee you, people have felt like that before if they smoked a bit of weed and listened to the song. But anyway, by the way, the title, Just Like a Hard Day's Night, just like 8 Days a Week, it comes from a Ringo malapropism that he said. Someone asked him in an interview in 1964 about something, and he said Tomorrow Never Knows, and it's not a phrase or anything. So they used that's why Lennon used it. So Ringo again with the great song titles. But Tomorrow Never Knows. Thanks.